Welcome, everyone. In this topic, we'll walk through the process of organizational development, how OD work typically unfolds from the first recognition that something needs to change, all the way to implementing improvement and making sure the change is sustained. Now, we'll start by grounding OD as a cyclical action research process. Then, we'll look at the objectives and core components of OD work. After that, we'll discuss the idea of OD as a growth process with predictable phases, and then we'll move into the practical steps, the entering and contracting, the launch phase where assessment and action plannings are integrated, the role of evaluation, and how to properly close an OD effort so the organization keeps the gains. Now let's begin with the foundation. The OD process is based on an action research logic. It is not a straight line. It is a continuous cycle. It begins when problem is recognized or when leaders see a better future and want to improve the organization proactively. Then OD proceeds through assessment, planning and intervention, implementing it, and checking whether progress is satisfactory. If the change is not producing the desired results, the cycle repeats because OD is designed to learn from evidence, adjust, and improve until the desired developmental results are achieved. OD is often misunderstood as something you do only when the organization is failing. But OD can begin even when an organization is doing well, because leaders may want to enhance competitive advantage, strengthen culture, or improve how work is done. Organizations also use OD to cope with changing environments like economic shifts, competitive pressure, technology changes, and evolving expectations of employees and customers. In short, OD is both corrective and developmental. Now, OD process has clear objectives. It is meant to help organizations identify and address problems rather than ignore them. It focuses on human and social processes like relationships, trust, cooperation, and conflict management, along with structural changes. It also emphasizes planned and proactive change rather than uncoordinated piecemeal actions. OD aims to establish measurable goals, improve the organization's ability to solve problems, and build a culture of continuous improvement. So OD is not only about fixing, it is about strengthening the organization's long-term capability. An OD program typically includes several core components. First, it is a planned change effort that involves leaders, members, and often an OD practitioner working together. Second, it relies on behavioral science knowledge and a collaborative approach to defining and resolving problems and opportunities. Third, it targets organization health and effectiveness, including self-renewal capability and not only short-term fixes. And OD often works through intact work teams and other important configurations because teams are major unit where work actually happens and where culture becomes visible. A unique part of this topic is that OD is also framed as a growth process. The idea is that living systems, like humans, plants, and organizations, tend to show predictable phases over time. Now, organizational performance changes across time horizons, sometimes slowly, sometimes quickly, but the phases are still recognizable. Understanding this helps leaders become proactive instead of waiting for decline before acting. So, in the formative phase, the organization is trying to find a pattern for success. The leader typically has a compelling vision, and the organization is in trial and error mode. There's often close contact with early customers and clients, and people are learning fast through experimentation. This phase can feel exciting and chaotic at the same time because systems and routines are still being formed. Going through the normative phase, the organization tries to replicate its pattern for success efficiently. Processes and systems are put in place to support predictability. Procedures, rules, hierarchy and formal structure increase. Now leadership tends to become more managerial and operational, that focused on process and profitability. Many people enjoy this phase because it feels stable and successful. But for some, it can feel limiting, less creative, more controlled, and more bureaucratic. The integrative phase is when the organization chooses to reinvent the pattern for success while keeping what still works from the normative phase. The hardest part is letting go of what no longer serves the organization, because old routines can drain resources needed for innovation. Culture can resist change, because this is how we do things here, and legacy systems can block what leaders know must be done. This phase is challenging because organizations must innovate while still delivering short-term performance. It is like rewiring a house while the electricity is still on. Now let's move on from growth phases back to the practical OD process. Entering and contracting are the initial steps. They start when managers or administrators sense an opportunity, a need, or a performance gap, sometimes with clear problems, and sometimes with diffuse goals like be more innovative. Entering and contracting define the issues preliminarily and establish a collaborative relationship between the practitioner and the client system. They set the initial parameters for later phases, such as diagnosis, planning, and implementing change, and evaluating and institutionalizing results. Entering and contracting can be simple or complex depending on context. If a manager is acting as their own OD practitioner, it may be an informal discussion with a group about what to work on and how to work together. But when professional practitioners are involved, like internal specialists or external consultants, entering and contracting tend to be more formal and may require preliminary information gathering to clarify the real issues and define the work responsibly. Now, the launch phase is described as the heart of the OD process. This is where valuable information is gathered and analyzed, and where a collaborative approach is used to evaluate the data, plan actions, and implement changes. Yes, launch can address issues directly, but the deeper goal is to improve organizational health, effectiveness, and self-renewing capability. In other words, the organization becomes better at change, not just changed. The purpose of launch is very practical. First, it helps the organization assess reality before treating assumption as facts. It aims to understand strengths, opportunities for improvement, and future possibilities for departments, teams, and other relevant groups. It also collects information to design, manage, and monitor the change process. Then it supports action planning, and it emphasizes implementing change in ways that improve the probability of success. A key principle is involvement, engaging people in the change process. Finally, launch includes evaluation so the organization learns and plans next steps based on evidence. A strong launch phase requires more than tools. It needs a philosophy or mindset. Because environments shift quickly, organizations need disciplined ways to assess reality, plan action, implement change, and adjust. The idea is that these are not consultant skills, they are organizational skills. The launch phase helps organizations build the capability to keep improving even after the formal OD effort ends. Evaluation is presented as a tool for improving management and organizational effectiveness. Through organizational assessment, the organization measures its functioning, problems, and achievements from behavioral and social system perspectives. Evaluation also supports credibility. It helps leaders demonstrate what is working, what is not, and why a particular program deserves support and continuation. Now, evaluation can happen at different times. Ex ante evaluation happens before implementation. This includes checking logic, consistency, and readiness. Current or progress evaluation happens during implementation. This includes monitoring resource use, activity execution, and partial results compared with plans. Ex post evaluation happens after implementations. These include assessing results and impact against objectives. So the topic highlights why evaluation matters. It helps determine whether goals are being achieved and whether expected effects and impacts are emerging. It checks whether the organization is adapting to changing environments and technology and whether resources are being used efficiently. Also, it identifies areas that need strengthening and helps the organization meet client or stakeholder needs more effectively. Finally, OD work needs closure. Closure is not just, yay, we finished the work, but it is the stage where you confirm that deliverables meet requirements, formalize acceptance, and ensure documentation and learning are captured. Closure also includes practical responsibilities like archiving documents, final payments, releasing resources, and ensuring the organization can move forward with clarity and accountability. Now, closure includes a set of disciplined closeout activities. This includes confirming work is done, completing any procurement closure and payments, and getting formal acceptance of deliverables. It also includes final performance reporting, like how the effort performed in terms of cost, schedule, and quality. And importantly, it includes archiving records and capturing lessons that can strengthen future projects and future OD efforts.